Well, that's very interesting. As I mentioned before, George and Sarah Ormerod had 10 children, 7 boys and 3 girls. And they all grew up together, essentially at Sedbury Park. The family was very self-contained because, first of course, the girls didn't go to school, but their mother, Sarah, was an excellent teacher herself. And the two, both George and Sarah, were very keen to provide intellectual interests for their family. And that comes out in the whole of the family itself. Of the 7 boys who went to school and went out into the world, none of them became soldiers or businessmen. They were solicitors or clergymen or doctors. That kind of approach. And all of them were interested in what went on in the world, the natural world, buildings, castles, history. And George and Sarah used to take the children out and show them these things, so that the whole family grew up together. And I said they were self-contained because they were. They worked together very well indeed. Now, Eleanor was the youngest. She was born in 1828 at Sedbury. And she was obviously not able to go to school, like all of them. And we don't know an awful lot about her, and for a long time. But like the others, she became interested in the natural world, and she became interested in everything that went on around her in the world. And she was very intelligent. And her mother, as I mentioned, was a very good teacher, and obviously taught her very well. Eleanor became what's called an entomologist. She was interested in the insects world and its effect on agriculture. And she started her original work around about 1850, I think, which is pretty young, when she found a locust flying down the street in Chepstow, which was so extraordinary and unusual that it stimulated her into action. It sounds silly, but that was the case. And thereafter, other members of the family appreciated her interest and her intelligence about that interest, and found samples for her and helped her. This was particularly so of Georgiana, her nearest sister. Well, Eleanor I came across first when I met a lady called Diana Ormerod, who was actually 95 at the time and was a direct descendant of the historian. I met her in Gloucestershire, and she gave me a picture of George Ormerod from the history in a frame, which you can see in this room, which actually comes from Sedbury Park. But as well as that, she was able to tell me that she actually knew George Ormerod's daughter Eleanor. Now that's interesting, isn't it? We're talking mid-1980s now, and that Eleanor Ormerod had died in 1901 and was famous by that time, but that Diana Ormerod was a little girl who remembered Eleanor very well from playing in the garden at her house in St Albans. And that was the first mention of Eleanor Ormerod I came across. The second was, of course, that marvellous book edited by Robert Wallace, which is all about the life of Eleanor Ormerod, which I managed to get. And it's very revealing about Eleanor Ormerod herself. She was obviously a very talented person, and it's not that I know an awful lot more about her, except that she was so talented, except to say that her influence went up to Edinburgh University, where a lot of drawings done by the family were finished up. And we went there, and we saw at Edinburgh University a wonderful portrait of Eleanor Ormerod, who had been given an honorary doctorate, the first one by a woman at Edinburgh University in about 1900. And there it was, sitting on the wall still in the university there in pride of place.